Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 6 of the CoT Lorecast. I'm here with Bromms again, so welcome back from last week.
Hello, Bukas.
And I'm here with Alucardalina Claire, who you may recognize from last week on our podcast and several other podcasts.
Hello.
So, if Brom's intro wasn't enough of a hint for you there, on this week's show we're going to be talking about the Asura, as that was the second race we ever covered in our original show. So it's time to go back in and redo the Asura lore and see what other interesting things we found in Guild Wars 2, maybe squash some speculation or come up with some new speculation. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But before that, how are you two doing today? How you doing?
Doing pretty well.
Super duper.
Alright, well that's good. Everybody's excited to be here.
Yes.
Ready to roll. So we're going to jump into it. I'm going to start us off with the origin. And I got two pieces, so bear with me. This may take a little bit. So we're going to start off with the Movement of the World article from Decimus the Historian, who you'll be recognizing pretty heavily for the next couple weeks as we redo these racial episodes, because he has a pretty quintessential description of what happens to them between Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2. So, the Asura are a subterranean race driven to the surface during the time of the Great Destroyer. Incredibly intelligent, they use their skills with magic and crafting to establish their presence on the surface. With the sudden absence of the dwarves, the Asura became the foremost crafters on Tyria, their abilities and skills instantly invaluable. The Asura acclimated to life above ground in the wake of the destroyers, creating cities that span territory above and below the surface. Although the Asura have grown to appreciate the skills and talents of other races, often using them in experiments or on dangerous missions, they still hold fast to their organized society. They have no organized government, preferring to create crews and follow the most experienced leader for the duration of each individual task. The short stature of this race has not impeded their confidence, however. In fact, one might even call them condescending, as they are perhaps a touch too confident for the comfort of some of the other races. The Asura believe they are destined to rule the larger, less intelligent races of the world. They see humans, especially, as quite good for heavy lifting, and in general terms view other races as merely pawns to be manipulated in Asuran schemes. As a step in their master plans, the Asura establish good relations with every other intelligent race on Tyria, from the militant Char to the inquisitive Silvari. They have even established Asura gates in major cities to provide safe passage from city to city to promote trade. However, they control these gates jealously, maintaining their trade routes and their neutrality as carefully as a gem, always keeping themselves on the edges of disputes and wars. Their own cities are far off the main paths of travel, distant even from the central Lion's Arch. There they perform experiments, searching the new magics and new powers to control. Although some say the Asura have integrated into society, it would be more accurate to say they're creeping over it like ivy and moss, fingers digging into crevices where their magic can take hold. In some ways they fear the caverns beneath the earth, still troubled by horrible beasts of fire and scale. The dragon that dwells in the depths threatens them above all, forcing them to abandon their ancient ways and discover new resources. For now, to keep their place, they must still maintain their neutrality among the powerful races of Tyria, but the Asura fear that sooner or later they will have to take sides, and then their tottering world may crumble back into the dark depths. So, I'd say that most of that still stands true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was written, you gotta remember again, as I say this every time I quote this article, this was like what came out in that PC Gamer magazine a million billion years ago, when they first announced Guild Wars 2 and were giving us first information about it. So this was very early on in development of Guild Wars 2 when this came out. And to be honest, most of us just bought that magazine so we could get the mini destroyer that came inside it. But I do have another interesting piece of Asuran history, which our very own Jalinar, this is back in one of the early stress tests, found this tablet, and I'll post a link in the description of the page where he translated it all. But there's a large tablet that's written in Asuran, which is a separate, entirely separate written language from New Crichton, but they kind of have similar bases. So he was able to translate this, and this is the history of the Asura from an Asuran standpoint. And it goes like this. We are the Asura, lords of deep domains that are now denied to us. Overwhelmed by numbers, power, and brute force, we have been forced to this open, sun-filled world and forced to rebuild our civilization. That we have succeeded is a testament to the indomitable spirit and innate intelligence of our people. In every day and with every invention, we rebuild our world and bend reality to match our needs. The eternal alchemy states that everything is interwoven, that the actions of a single Asura, of one experiment, can have wider implications throughout the world. We are all part of the eternal alchemy, whether as cogs, pistons, wheels, springs, or arcanic crystals. The ultimate goal in life is to comprehend the greater purpose of the eternal alchemy and to strive in perfecting it. So you can see kind of the glaring differences between what Decimus, a human, wrote about where the Asura were and how they feel about it. But yeah, that's just a little bit of interesting Asuran trivia there for you. So, what do you guys think? General impressions of the Asura and where they come from and all that.
Well, coming from Guild Wars 1, it was really interesting to go down the first time into the chasm.
Mm-hmm.
And just suddenly have the Asura thrust upon you. And your first impression is pretty much the same impression that I have now of them, is that they're really condescending.
What about you, Bromms?
Yeah, Vec was my favorite hero from Guild Wars 1, and ever since I came across him, I was like, I really wish that I could play an Asura because they seem so much fun. And then, as you explore their storyline, they always kind of reminded me of Brain from Pinky and the Brain, which is interesting because the guy that did the voice for the Brain also did the voice for Vec.
Yep, that's the first thing. That was my first impression of the Asura when I first went into Eye of the North. Is I guess we're gonna try to take over the world tonight because I'm running around with the Brain. So, Alright, so did you guys have anything else? The origin and the history of the Asura are kind of interwoven there. Did you have anything, either of you have anything else you wanted to add to that, or you think we kind of got it all?
I think that pretty much. I mean, there's not a whole lot. You mentioned that they came from underground, and I know a lot of the information and records they used to have were destroyed during that whole process. So, I think that's about all we really know at this point.
All right. So I guess we kind of talked a little bit about it, but how about you talk about the physiology, Bromms? What the Asura are like physically? Right.
Well, I think first you should give your very brief description of.
And I'll be sure to put some of the original concept art in the background. We were just talking about it before, and the weird transformation the Asura have undergone from skrit-like to bat-like to fringed lizard to mogwai and gremlins. But I believe it was Jeff Grubb, and I have to find the article. And I mentioned it in our one of our other podcasts. Was that when they were trying to come up with what their gnomish race would be, the general idea was if you took Stewie Griffin from Family Guy and combined him with a shark, and that's what you get.
It's so perfect for them. Yeah, they're basically gnomish is a good way to put it. They're kind of reminiscent of gnomes from other role playing games, but they're short, roughly 3 to 4 feet tall. I think there's one of the lore bits in the game that says they come up to the belt buckle on a Norn, but they have exaggerated features. Their heads are very large. Their hands and feet are larger than they would be on humans. Because they lived underground, they typically have earthen color skin, so blacks, browns, grays, and whites. They have, like shark's teeth, essentially, very sharp teeth. And their eyes take up just about half of their face, which we assume was from when they lived underground and they had to get more light. Their ears are long and floppy, and they kind of drape to the sides of their head. And it's one of the few ways that you can actually tell what gender an Asura is. The females tend to have more arched out ears, while the male ears tend to hang straight down. But otherwise, there's not a lot of difference between the male and female genders. Some of the things that I had read were saying that they will often change their outfits a bit so that they can confuse the other races as to whether they're a male or female.
Well, it's easily confusing, I'd say.
That explains it with the females' outfits being a little more than revealing.
Yeah, it's. I guess we should mention in Guild Wars 2, all of the armor that the Asura wear are based on the male model of the armor, and with the newest armor that was released, it's kind of strange because it exposes some things that most games wouldn't expose, I guess is the best way to put it.
I was looking through the PvP locker, and there is one that is literally just like a collar around the neck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's a little, honestly, it kind of harkens back to our discussion about Sylvari, and it's a little disappointing, to be honest with you, because there's so little like, you make an Asura, you're already limited in your face and your hair configurations, and then you have to have the same armor for male and female. A little disappointing.
Yeah, I can almost understand it from a certain sense, because I've never really had the impression that Asura are interested much in gender. You don't really see a difference between male and female as far as status, but from a design standpoint, it is a little disappointing, and especially in those weird instances where there are exposed parts where you're like, whoa, okay.
It's like, are they built the same as us? Is that wrong?
Well, that's true. You bring up a good point.
Because when you think of Char, you wouldn't mind their chest being exposed, because they're just cats.
Right. And what I also find is funny is that they wear the same underwear. Male and female Asura. They wear that weird pink kind of smock thing as their underwear. It's kind of weird. Every other race has distinguishing between male and female. Male and female Asura, same undergarments. Interesting. Anyway.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing really, as far as physiology is concerned, I know we talked a bit on the Sylvari podcast about their reproduction, and the Asura, they do have live births in the same manner that humans do, but there are rumors that Asuran babies can begin speaking as soon as one day after they're born, which sounds like something the Asura might say. But
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they'd be better hatching from eggs. Don't you feel like they're like?
Yeah.
Maybe if they were still the gremlin things.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found, I don't know if you were going to mention, but I found it interesting back when Guild Wars 1 was out, and I designed my Asura to have small ears, because there are Asura who think that ears show their worth, and so people with, or Asura with small ears would be bullied.
But that's interesting. So, short ears is something you would get bullied over, or I guess long ears would be, you'd be praised, I guess?
Yeah, pretty much. It's basically like big brain, small brain type thing.
I think I read somewhere actually that since their rise to the surface, their ears have actually been shrinking. Which is, from that standpoint is interesting, because who knows what that actually means.
Well, another thing I find interesting with since they rose to the surface is if you look at, like, a lot of the Asura, and specifically Vec from Guild Wars 1, their eyes were, like, just totally black. No color to the eyes, no separation from, pupil and iris.
Yeah.
And I know that wasn't all of the Asura from Guild Wars 1, because there were other ones that had that, like, Ula and those, but I don't think that's even an option you can really make in Guild Wars 2. Like, all of them have to have some kind of a pupil, I think. Maybe that's a transgression to the surface.
Their hands and feet, which are hilariously awesome. They have 3 little tiny stubby fingers and an opposable thumb, so they have 1 less than we do. And their feet only have 3 toes, with the middle toe being much larger than the other 2. To me, it makes them look adorable, even though they're not really supposed to, I guess. But I love how they look because of that. So.
What you talking about? My Asura is adorable.
So I think I know they live longer than humans, but I think it was only said like about 15% or so longer than a human's lifespan.
Yeah,
if they survive lab accidents.
Yes.
right.
So unfortunately, there won't be any still alive from Guild Wars 1 time.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a matter of time until they discover immortality, really. So.
Yeah, Futurama style, a bunch of heads in containers.
I would not go into that room.
No, it would be terrifying.
Yeah. And I also, again, Guild Wars 1 more, and maybe that was just because the Vec was more prominently displayed in cutscenes with his sharp teeth and just the solid black eyes, were almost a little unsettling. Like, I don't think I would feel comfortable, like, if I ran into an Asura, at least Guild Wars 1 Asura anyway. I'd be, like, a little scared, because they look like they could do some damage with those teeth, Yeah,
even in Guild Wars 2, I mean, they still have those really sharp teeth. You just don't see them very often, but I guess it's one of the things I love, because they're, like, super cute on the outside, but then they have these really sharp teeth and these pointy fingernails and, like, I don't know.
They're sharks.
Yes.
They're sharks. That's exactly.
Griffin sharks. Did you have anything else physiologically to discuss?
Negative.
Claire, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. So let's talk culture. Asura culture is, I would say, probably, for the most part, one of the most different, I should say, from the other races, because they all seem to have, I mean, aside from maybe the Char, who are more military-based, probably, we kind of already talked about it, but they're extremely, extremely smart, and they're all about, telling you how smart they are. And they're extremely confident and, I guess you could say in your face about how they know more than you and you're a lesser race. And you see that a lot more, I feel, in Guild Wars 1 with Vec constantly throwing Buka around all the time. And I don't really see that much in Guild Wars 2. Do you guys?
Yeah, I was complaining about that while I was playing Guild Wars 1 the other day. I was like, I do not see, like, so many insults passed at us.
Which is interesting, because that's like every other word in Guild Wars 1 with the Asura is like, you're a Buka. Buka Buka this, Buka Buka that.
I wonder
Not too annoying.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if it has something to do with, it's like their attempt to try to get along with the other race. Yeah, because, like, it's funny, you actually see it a lot when people roleplay Asura, but you don't see it from the ones in the game as much.
Yeah, I would like to, and you guys have played the Asura story probably more than I have. Does it come out in the personal story at all?
I don't think so.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously we know that they are probably the best, the Char are pretty good, but the best kind of crafters and purveyors of magical goods through the use of their arcane magic, which is different than all of the other kind of magic in the game, which don't confuse, arcane magic from an Asura with like an elementalist magic, because you could be a warrior, but an Asuran warrior would still have knowledge of arcane magics. They love golemancy, and that seems to be a lot bigger of a deal, I feel, in this game as well. A lot of the personal story revolves around golems.
Yeah.
Whereas we did have golems in Guild Wars 1. Some of them were even heroes through Mox, and there was that whole Mox Rocks and whatever the other ones were. But I guess the big thing about Asuran culture would be the 3 main colleges. But the 3 main colleges of the Asura are statics, dynamics, and synergetics. And this pretty much dictates, again, and I haven't played too much of the personal story, so I'll have to let you guys jump in on this, but it pretty much dictates the whole life of your Asura and the decisions they make going forward. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Clem.
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay.
I think it kind of determines how your outlook toward your inventing is, because like the statics college is more the measure twice, cut once type of thought, where it's very practical and it's very calculated. Whereas like dynamics is the complete opposite of that. It's more like work on the fly, and if something goes wrong, it's not a failure if you've learned from it.
And then synergetics?
Synergetics is much more confusing. They're more focused on the whole eternal alchemy thing and how it kind of binds all of their theories together. So they study more like formulas and patterns instead of actual like physical discovery. I feel like the colleges are they kind of separate someone more than say the cycles do for a Sylvari. Like the cycles are still kind of fluid, but the colleges really aren't. They're very like static in how they approach different things. So from a role-playing standpoint, I guess it would affect it, I think, a lot.
Alright, and I guess, we should talk about eventually, your Asuras growing up, they're eventually going to go to college. They study under all different, they kind of become an apprentice to some master of a given college that they're in. They eventually graduate, and on that day, I believe, is when they form their very first crew, which is a large part of the Asuran culture as well, because this is kind of how they operate, since family life isn't really a traditional family life for an Asura. We see that they do have, there are children, little Asura, which are adorable, running around Radasum. And they're, affectionately referred to as offspring or progeny, which I think is kind of interesting. And again, if you watch any of our episodes where we talk about Vec or Heroes of the Past, things like that, you can see that an Asura's relationship with their parents could be very, very tense and almost a hatred between the two of them.
Yeah.
So, but the crew is basically, they're a group of Asura combined together for one task, whatever that is. And once that task is completed, they kind of disband, and then everybody moves on to more new work. But this is kind of their familial system, whereas your crew is kind of your family, and then you kind of have a new family, kind of like a Char has a warband, except warbands always stay together and crews are constantly changing. Although we do see, I think, in one of the novels, and you see it a little bit in game as well, that a crew doesn't necessarily need to be comprised of only Asura. And Asura can have other races as part of their crew, which I believe it's in Ghosts of Ascalon that Cranks, I believe, refers to everybody that's with him, like Dougal Keen and all of them, as part of his crew. Do you have anything else? You guys have anything else for the culture? I mean, there's not a ton of stuff. The colleges are the main real definition of their culture, I feel.
Speaking on the crew things, is that a lot of times when you're reading about Asura, or even in game, you see them less with a crew and more with assistants.
Yeah. Huh.
It seems like only the really great and prominent Asura have like a lot of assistants enough to really be called a crew. I wonder if it is just a more like a family they see every once in a while than a family they see very often every day.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't really put that connection together till you just said that, but yeah, you're right. You do see... I don't think you see many crews at all, other than the ones that are working on the Asura gates seem to all be crew members. But that just
Yeah.
could be because that's what they gave the NPCs names.
You see crews more often in Guild Wars 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I don't think I can. I mean, there's like you said, there's a couple NPCs named like crew member whatever, but there's not many. I don't think you ever come across an actual like crew anywhere, except maybe in the Asuran storyline. I think you're part of a crew when you start, but as soon as your storyline's over, that it's basically disbanded. So
Yeah, that good, good discussion topics, guys. This is good stuff. Um, and I guess let's see. Do we have anything else? And I kind of just mentioned before that they do have their own written language, although it doesn't seem to be used that heavily, other than like a couple of random scribes on tablets and things around the world that don't actually play that huge of a difference in the game. So it seems like they, for the most part, use New Crichton like all the other races.
I assume it'll be easier to do that because with all the other races doing New Crichton, there would be, if it was just Asuran, then there would need to be like a translator.
Yeah.
And you know none of them have time for that.
Oh, of course. Those stupid bukas don't understand our language, so they don't know won't hurt them. Or maybe it will, and we'll just make best use of that while we can.
Well, it's more like they won't know how we're insulting them.
Yeah, that's true too. So I guess since we're talking about the culture, we should talk about the evil faction of the Asura, which is the Inquest. So, alright. What do you guys got on the Inquest? Anything?
Isn't it technically one of the colleges? Technically?
I
guess?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't know. It sounds like it's supposed to be.
Like a college or just a rather large crew?
Yeah, I think that's how it's usually referred to, as the largest crew in a certain culture as a whole. But, yeah, it is kind of...
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Another thing is that you get to the part in Metro Province where they're trying to recruit progeny. That would be like prime recruiting time to get them into college.
That's true too.
Yeah. They act as more of a college, just they seem to be very well organized, whereas like a crew doesn't really sound like it would be to that degree. I mean, they're spread all over the place, but they seem to all kind of have the same purpose, so it's kind of confusing.
And I guess it's weird because if it is I guess more of a college, because if it was a crew, then there would be several sub-crews doing their own individual things. Like, you know, they all have the ultimate goal, which we should just mention quick, and we'll talk more about the Eternal Alchemy in a little bit, but it's about completely understanding what the Eternal Alchemy is, which is kind of what all the others are working on. But the Inquest's goal is to find it, control it, and twist it to their will, because they believe the Eternal Alchemy is a machine like any other machine and can be tweaked and controlled. So you have the Inquest, let's call it like a super crew, and then you have all these little tiny crews underneath that are off doing their own things to try to control the Eternal Alchemy. And we see that a lot. Actually, this is probably one of the more prominent evil factions, I would say, in the game, because I mean, we see them in several areas with a lot of interesting stuff. And now with the victory of Ellen Keel, we'll see some more Inquest stuff through the fractal that's developed around the explosion of the Thaumanova reactor. But I mean, out of as far as story goes for all of the dungeons in the game, outside of Ara, because that's got its own kind of special place for story. I mean, CoE has some of the craziest stuff in it, I would say.
Yeah, I think that the Inquest to me seems like they are one of, like you said, they're one of the more prominent quote unquote evil factions, and they seem to have more of an effect on things than a lot of other factions do. Um, there's what, two dungeons associated with? Aren't they in Sorrow's Embrace also?
Yep. Isn't that's where Kudu is, I believe. He's
Yeah,
in Sorrow's Embrace.
yeah.
Yeah, because
They,
there's the whole Iron Forgeman thing.
right. They kind of show up throughout the whole game, whereas like the Nightmare Court, for instance, they show up a little bit at the beginning, but they're not really that prominent later on. Um, but the Inquest has done some things that have had huge effects on the world, like the reactor, for instance.
Yep,
But
and then the whole, the Crucible of Eternity area with all the different zones, and the creation of Subject Alpha using dragon matter, let's call it.
and it could be argued that they led to the creation of the Nightmare Court in part, which
Yep.
is kind of huge. So
Yeah. So they just really do have those little tiny hands in all sorts of things.
what I find interesting about them though is I think they're the shortest removed from their quote unquote good counterparts, because they're still Asura through and through, and you can see that in their interactions. They just kind of have a different mindset on how to go about learning.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't ever say that they're not evil, because they definitely are. They just kind of have a different method, and they lack that like experimental morality that the other Asura most of the time have.
Yeah, one of the arguments that was very prominent in the beginning of Guild Wars 2 was if the evil counterparts for each race were actually evil. And I think that the Inquest is probably the most evil, just because, the Asura decided to do experiments on the Sylvari until they figured out they were sentient. But the Inquest kind of continues on that, knowing that they're sentient, and they do trap things that are alive and torture them, and basically turn them into monsters just to see how things work.
Yeah, and it's not even kind of like what we talked about with the Sylvari, where there's some, like, in some case where there's some ultimate goal, which is to try to break the Sylvari from the Pale Tree. Sometimes the Inquest just do it just because they want to do it. Like, well, let's torture this guy and see what happens. Just because we want to see what happens.
Yeah, pretty much.
They're very much the epitome of everything else is lesser than we are, so they don't matter at all. That's like the Inquest philosophy.
And it makes them thieves too, so...
Yeah.
Thieves who will murder for something petty.
Right.
Yeah, they're definitely one of the ones that I feel like I hate. Like, I actually have, like, when I play the game, I'm like, Inquest. Like, I don't really care about the Nightmare Court. And, I mean, humans, what do we have? Bandits in Caudicus's Manor? Ooh,
yeah.
That's real scary.
We dealt with ours a while back.
I guess that's true.
They're definitely one of the harder evil factions for me to relate to, or to sympathize with, I guess.
Yeah.
There's really no way that you can spin their mindset to anything close to not evil, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we should talk a little bit about Kudu. He's the creator of the Inquest, I believe. Yes. And you actually, I feel like they kind of made up the whole rivalry with Zoja just to add something to the game, but I believe he was Snap's first apprentice, if memory serves. And so he was Snap's first apprentice, and then he wasn't anymore. I think he was disowned by Sniff, I believe.
Serta came by and he pretty much thought she was better, is what I'm under the impression of.
That sounds like an Asuran thing to do. And, you know, then he goes off and creates the Inquest, and we heard a lot about him. Rhys Osby dropped his name all the time when talking about the Nightmare Court, and about how, you know, he wanted to experiment, and he was one of the heavy proprietors of let's torture these Sylvari to see how they work, after we found out that they were sentient, like we just mentioned.
Supposedly he's the one that met Malamedes first, so he was like the first Asura person, or the first Asuran ever to encounter the Sylvari.
Yep, and look at what he did.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a little bitch, excuse the language, but when you play through the dungeons, all he does is run away. He just runs away from you. And
stuff. And one of the, well, I guess not anymore, but when the game first came out, it was one of the hardest boss fights in the game. The golems that he keeps sending out from the portal that, are ridiculous.
Maybe he just became like so paranoid. Because, you know, doing that kind of stuff will make you really paranoid. And so, you know, he ended up like, I guess, just afraid of everything. That's like my headcanon for that, so.
Gotcha. It makes sense. I mean, yeah, you can only have so much power before you start to think that other people are trying to take it away from you. And in the Inquest, particularly, that would make a lot of sense.
yeah, they're I mean, like I've said before, I definitely think that it was probably, I also think it's one of the better written you know, evil factions, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, they're more interesting. There's a lot of lore there, to the point where there's a whole fractal could be developed all around it.
As well as a dungeon that is pretty much over the same sort of place, a replacement place for it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, through the Crucible of Eternity, and was going to be the potential for one of the Guild Wars novels before they changed it into Sea of Sorrows. The original novel is going to be called The Crucible of Eternity, and then they changed it to Sea of Sorrows, which I love that.
Crucible of Eternity too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I love Sea of Sorrows, but I think I'd rather see what they could have come up with for Crucible of Eternity book.
Maybe it'd have too many spoilers for dragons.
That's probably why.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Alright, so Inquest. Anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up for the Inquest?
Yeah, it's interesting that they have a representative on the Arcane Council, which is something we'll talk about a little later. But they're kind of officially recognized by a certain society, and they're not completely shunned, which is weird because most evil factions are. But the Inquest, they're sort of working their way into the politics of the whole Arcane Council thing, and a lot of the contracts and the work they're starting to give to the Inquest because the Arcane Council just can't be bothered with it. So I think we'll probably be seeing a lot more of them because they're obviously trying to get more prominent in a certain society.
Yeah, they have a place in Radisson, like a specific sector for the Inquest.
Yeah, that's right. See,
Like,
I don't ever
that's
go
allowed-
to Radisum at all.
Like, the fact that that's allowed to exist in such a big city shows their acceptance of them.
Yeah, it's one of the more interesting things, kind of going back to their culture, is that they allow stuff like that. I mean, the Inquest does these horrible things, and when they go too far, sometimes obviously they're punished for it. But I mean, like in one of the Asura opening stories, the Inquest basically comes in and steals your stuff, and the decision is made that they get to keep the thing that they claimed was theirs originally, because the council basically just gives everything over to the Inquest now.
After they flooded the room.
Right.
Is that like the is that the servitor golem? I believe. Is that one?
I honestly don't remember.
I am thinking of the weather manipulator.
Okay. Again, not much on the Asura storyline. I just maybe it's just because I'm playing a profession that I don't really care too much for, so that could be why.
That'll do it.
Alright, so if you guys don't have anything else on the Inquest that you'd like to mention, so I mean, there's a lot of intricate little stuff you can really drill into with the Inquest, but I feel for the whole overarching what the Inquest is, we pretty much hit the nail on the head, and there wasn't really too much reveal and huge differences from what we knew before the game came out to what we have now that we're this far into the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, the only thing we got was access to a little bit more area, and we got to actually fight Kudu and know that they were trying to rebuild the Iron Forgemen. Bromms, you mentioned the Arcane Council, and you wanted to talk about the government, so why don't we move on to that?
Yeah, the Arcane Council is kind of the head of the Asuran governmental body. They're run by High Counselor Flax, and it's essentially a council where the heads of each of the 3 colleges, and then, like we said, a member of the Inquest, and a couple other, just, I guess, respected members of society. I think they're all inventors, but they kind of sit there. And what I love about it is that the people on the council are the people that couldn't hide themselves away and basically got pulled into it. So no one that's there wants to actually be there. I think it's Counselor Ludo, who is the College of Statics Dean. She says, no one really wants to be on the council. We're the ones left to obsess over minutia while everyone else explores the world. So that's kind of why they push everything toward the Inquest, is because none of them want to be there and none of them want to bother with the actual politics, but they have to because they were forced to.
Yeah, I think that's actually, I believe, doesn't that happen to Vec in Guild Wars 1? Is it Eye of the North, or one of the after missions where he gets kind of suckered into doing that and he just doesn't want to? Because once you become part of the council, you can't do any more of your own experiments because you're stuck dealing with council.
Yeah, you're basically stuck there until you can drag someone else in to do it for you.
Yeah, maybe it was Gad that got put on the council, I forget. But yeah, that is an interesting governmental body where you put a whole bunch of the people that rule over most of your stuff are not put there by choice or by vote. They're put there kind of just because they couldn't get away.
Exactly, yeah.
Sounds like a sound way to run a government.
Yeah, well, I guess it's been working for them, however well that goes, but yeah.
And I mean, I guess it also kind of, like we said before, with they love the operating in a small kind of crew faction. That would also make making a cohesive government kind of difficult. If most of your populace is working in specialized little groups that have their own set of rules. So, I mean, the Arcane Council does try to rule over the major decisions, but we talked about how the Inquest kind of can play influence there.
Yeah, and I kind of get the impression that they really don't do all that much, although that might just be extrapolation from the game. It might be wrong, but I know they intervene in some of the Asura storyline. Like I said, when the Inquest steals some of your things, it's left to the Arcane Council to deliberate that. But other than like kind of petty disputes like that, I'm not sure what else really they do. Yeah, so I don't know.
How about you, Claire? Anything on the Arcane Council?
You'd think that they'd eventually get enough people there that were just tired of the Inquest.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think. You know what? Sorry to jump back. It was Zin. Was the guy that went. Oh, he went before the Arcane Council. The Trial of Zin mission. That's the whole.
Yeah.
Going for Mox. That's what it was. I spaced on that. It was driving me crazy.
I knew the name. I just couldn't find it.
Yeah. Because Ula was a member on the council, and I know that she was,
She became antisocial.
yeah, locks herself away in her lab. But did you have anything else more on the Arcane Council and any more of the governing bodies? Because they don't really have like a military force or a police force or anything. You know, they're just kind of.
They have the peacemakers, which are kind
of. Oh,
of.
that's right. Yeah.
Force. They mostly patrol with golems, and they like patrol Radasum and the Metrica province. It's not really clear exactly what their role is. I assume that they just make sure that there's no kind of overt disturbances. They seem to be more of the visible police force, whereas the Arcane Eye, which works directly for the Arcane Council, they're sort of the secret society, almost like the FBI of Tyria, you know. And they kind of work in the shadows, and they exist to expose and stop people that are, or to stop Asura specifically, that aim to harm Radasum. So there are those two kind of checks and balance systems there. But as far as specifically what their roles are, or how they go about doing their things, it's not really specific that I've found.
Well, you see enough of the peacemakers dead on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the peacemakers were just put in the game to give a name to the weapons. Because if you think about it, you have Warden weapons, Seraph weapons, you know, all that stuff. So the Asura needed a tier 3 to have a weapon name. So they're just like, yeah, and they have the peacemakers to make these cool purple weapons. Yeah. So that's where the peacemaker. That's Lagwyn's theory of why the peacemakers exist.
What's weird about that though is just going back to the inquest again. It's such a strange thing to think that this evil entity kind of works with all of these checks and balances also. So it kind of gives me the impression that as long as they're not doing anything to hurt the Asura, they can do whatever they want. It doesn't matter.
Sometimes they do hurt the Asura, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It doesn't. They seem, you know, this council. Obviously, we've expressed that they're not super involved in what goes on. But yeah, you're right. They don't really seem to care too much. Like they tortured Malamedes and caused the whole existence of an evil faction of the Nightmare Court, and I don't think there was any repercussions. I mean, Kudu's still running around doing his thing.
Yeah.
Very different outlooks than all the other races on, you know, on all these different evil ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the Norn, I guess, are kind of similar in that they let the Sons of Svanir come into Holbrook. They have a whole section in Holbrook too, I believe.
Yeah.
Because they kind of have that same thing, like we don't agree with what you believe in, but as long as it's not disruptive and causing problems and you're not forcing yourself upon other Norn, then we're okay with it. Whereas I guess the Asura are kind of similar to that, whereas the rest of the races are like, there are 0 Flame Legion allowed into Black Citadel.
The Asuran way is more, it seems sometimes like it's, you can do whatever you want, just don't get caught. Because if you get caught, you're in trouble. But you can do whatever, just don't let us know about it. Alright.
Alright, so I guess we'll move on to some of the key characters, and I know Claire was excited to talk about a couple.
Yes.
So, let's start there. We'll throw it over to you and take it away.
Okay. Yeah, of course, in Guild Wars 1, I didn't really like Ula, because she was just really antisocial and condescending, like all Asura are, and I know I'm just going to explain a typical Asura when I talk about her, but when I came to Guild Wars 2 and saw her lab thing, I absolutely adored her. And the story was that, you know, she focuses on mechanical golems. She's a golemancer, and basically she made a lab so secure that most people do not make it through. Our characters are like obviously the exception there. It's only operated by a very few number of assistants, but it's mostly golems. and it is absolutely riddled with traps. And so if that gives you any idea of how antisocial she is, we have to come to her, of course, to ask her help to fight against the destroyers in Guild Wars 1. And it was really funny because our characters actually had to insult her intelligence to get her to join us.
Yeah, that I just played that mission just recently, and yeah. I guess she's not smart enough to come along.
Pretty much.
And then Vec's like, wait, what are you? Shut up, Vec. No.
Be smart for once.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Guild Wars 2, we can find her lab in Retrica, and there's basically a bunch of holograms there that kind of talk to us. And if you get the energy crystal for the Matrix imprint lock, it initiates an escort event for this guy named Researcher Oral. And basically you need to aid him in the research of her lab. Basically he's going in to steal things from her.
Yep.
We find like all these notes in her lab, and it's just mostly trivial things like rules on Golomancy and Necromancy, and all the way to shopping lists. Which also shows that there were magazines on golems way back 250 years ago. But once you get in there, they start to comment on how the golems seem to be infused with necromantic energies. And it all just kind of becomes like really creepy but interesting. And you have to activate all these holo projectors, which Ula starts to talk about how she achieved the greatest feat of any Golemancer. Basically, you find out that she's kept herself alive through Golomancy and Necromancy, and turns herself into the golem OOL-99L. And so she becomes this cool dead golem person, and you get to fight her.
Yeah, I only did that mission just recently, believe it or not. I just did it like 2 months ago for the very first time.
I have a ton of energy crystals if you guys ever want to come and do the...
Yeah, I like that one because it's not obviously apparent that there's anything back there. Like, you come across her lab and it's locked and you're like, oh, that stinks. And then you find this energy crystal kind of like as a random drop. You're like, wait a second, wasn't there a door? Awesome! So you run over there and then you can actually get in there, and it's super cool.
Apparently she, like, lost the crystal. She reminded herself not to lose it, but she lost it anyway, which is how you stumble upon it.
Nice. Good old Ula.
Yeah, so needless to say, she's like one of my favorite Asura now.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy that mission. I like that kind of stuff where you don't like the Dwarven Keys, for instance, in Dredgehunt Cliffs, where you don't have to go in them, but if you find like cool random drops out in the world, then you can go and it'll let you do something different or extended content, which is pretty cool. So, Claire, do you have anyone else that you wanted to discuss?
Not really. She's pretty much my favorite.
All right. Bromms, how about you?
Well, let's see. We talked about Snaff a little bit, I think, but just to kind of go over him a little bit, he was one of the original members of Destiny's Edge. He mentored Zoja and Kudu, like we said before. He's considered by a lot of non-Asuran people to be the best Asuran that's ever lived, because he was more interested in kind of in forming social bonds with people, where most Asura don't care about that kind of thing. But he was killed during the fight with Krakatoric, even though he had like taken over the dragon's body, if I read that right.
Mm-hmm.
And his death is one of the reasons, or I guess the main reason, why Destiny's Edge broke up. because Zoja started blaming Air, and then everything kind of went downhill from there. So he's definitely one of the more important as far as everything going on, Asura, I think.
Yeah, he was definitely the best member of Destiny's Edge, I think.
I
Yes.
have to disagree, but
Oh, yeah?
I'm not gonna get on that. Okay.
Okay, alright, that's for another
It's
time.
just as long as no one's favorite is Logan. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice to
Logan's
find
fault. Snapp's dead.
Yep, it is. It absolutely is. That's what's great about having a podcast with the three of us. Logan Thackeray is the worst.
Yes.
No repercussions.
I don't hear anybody disagreeing, so it's clearly true.
Yep. So, there we go. Yes, he's the reason. Ultimately, though, all kidding aside, Logan Thackeray pretty much is the reason why. Because they were down one member to defend, and that, like Bromms said, led to the destruction of Destiny's Edge, because Ritlock blames Logan, Zoja blames Air, Kaith is stupid. I mean, yeah, she's just collecting crystals, walking around, being all broody alone in the crystal desert, and then, you know, complaining about her lover or whatever else. I really don't like Kaith, and I wanted to like her so bad. Because Colleen was the best, one of the best Sylvari ever written.
Yes.
And, yeah. Don't see, this is an Asura show, though, so, let's get back.
Well, we're talking about, like, Destiny's Edge, which, of course, had 2 Asura in it.
Yeah.
Not just 1.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk, let's get your opinion on Zoja, because I want to like Zoja so much, because she's literally only because she's voiced by Felicia Day, and I love Felicia Day, but I don't love Zoja.
I do. I like Zoja quite a bit, I have to admit. I think she's probably my favorite member of Destiny's Edge, of the current, well, not current Destiny's Edge, but of the 5 that we have in the game.
Okay.
She was a little more different in the book. She was a lot more caring, and then I guess Snap just his death just kind of drove her over the edge, and now she's typical Asura.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. It did seem like that pretty much altered her entire character. Way to go, Logan. But, yeah, I can't... I mean, I really don't like any, to be honest with you, of the mentor characters. Like, I don't mind Ritlock.
Ritlock's the best.
Oh, I knew it was going to be Ritlock. How did I know? But out of all of the mentor characters that you have from Destiny's Edge, Ritlock, I think, is definitely the most tolerable. I find that I like a lot more of the secondary characters, like Countess Anise and people like that. I enjoyed them more than the actual main. I mean, well, Countess Anise is a counterpart to Logan Thackeray, so duh.
Like Traherne, you mean, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's my favorite.
Absolutely.
Commander.
Zoja has her moments where she's where her kind of like her pouting is a little too much, I think, but she has a golem named Mr. Sparkles. How can you like that? It's awesome.
It wasn't even hers, though.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's hers now.
Alright.
I think she's a little more tolerable in the certain storyline, though.
Yeah. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Absolutely.
Maybe I really should get on playing that.
You should.
Yeah,
She's not as pouty there. Like, she's very, like, forward, and she knows what she wants to do, which I guess she kind of is the other time. I don't know, she's just not as whiny as she's talking to Air.
She's a charmer. Like that one time, I don't know if you've been through this one, but she was talking to the guy in Metrica Province, and basically it's because he liked her, and she, like, used that to her advantage to get what she wanted.
Sounds like an Asura to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Alright, who else is out there that are key Asura characters? Talked about, I mean, Kudus, Ula, Snaf, and Zoja are like the big ones that are in this game. I did a whole Heroes of the Past episode of the podcast on Vec, so I'm not going to go into Vec, but Again, I'd like to point out how he doesn't exist in Guild Wars 2, really.
There's Gad.
Well, that's true.
He has, I think one of the ascended items is called like Vex something or other. So he exists there, I guess. If you
Yeah.
But it is weird. What he was supposed to be like this super unequaled Asuran gate specialist, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's unfortunate they don't mention him more because he's definitely one of my favorite Asura ever because he was just awesome. But oh well.
They didn't even keep his gate design, which was a lot cooler.
Yeah, it was a lot cooler. You're right.
I agree.
And, I mean, like, you see there's, like, a statue of, like, Pyre Fearshot and Kala Scorch Razor in them in the Black Citadel. There's no Vex statue.
Yeah,
It's
I can
snap
almost
statue.
understand that because the Asura don't seem like well. Yeah, I
Is there a
guess
snap statue?
That's true.
In Zoj's,
That reminds me of a terrible joke that White told me.
Oh, let's hear it.
He didn't even mean to. Well, you know how there's a statue for Pyre and there's one for Jorah. And we were going through them all, and he's like, I guess there's technically a statue for Ogden.
That's hilariously awesome.
Oh, yeah, he's right. I guess there is.
It's of the finest craftsmanship somehow.
It's so lifelike. Alright, yeah, so... I'm trying to think if there's any other major...
Yeah,
Oh.
I couldn't really... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Levy, researcher Levy. I guess, kind of, from the South Sun content. She's, I guess, kind of a big deal in that. She was the one who kind of pre-told that there was gonna be changes, or there was like changes in the ecosystem and the Karka were coming, and warned Captain Magnus, and he was like, no, there's not. And then they happened, he's like, crap, you better fix this, and then she's the one who sent you on the mission to, like, find the... Remember, originally, Karka couldn't be harmed in the beginning of the last... or the Lost Shores, so we had to go find, like, a special gun that could break through their Karka shell. And we had to... and then, like, that totally doesn't exist anymore. Now, we could just fight them.
It is that powerful.
Yeah. I still... That bothered me a lot. But that's another topic for another time, but...
Just have a Karka episode.
Oh, that sounds like the most annoying, repetitive episode ever.
Yeah.
I might.
There is one more that we haven't mentioned yet that who has to be mentioned, and that is Moto.
Oh, you're
Oh,
right.
yes.
Moto is awesome.
Moto is probably my favorite Asura now that you mention that.
Yeah, he's the one that created the Super Adventure Box, which is by far, in my opinion, the best mini game that we've had.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I have to disagree, actually. That's like my second favorite.
First?
The Bell Choir.
Oh, Bellchoir was great.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll give you that one. That one was nice.
Oh, but I love Halloween too. I love Reaper's Rumble. Okay, nostalgia episode, maybe next.
Yes.
Nostalgia in a game that's not even a year old yet.
Exactly.
Alright, so
That's the way
let's...
they do it.
Well,
They
yeah.
have to be nostalgic because all the content disappears.
Yeah, that's true.
But I ain't mad.
No. Let's hear your description. Let's talk Moto.
Okay. Go for it.
I'm gonna go for it? Okay. Yes, I'm gonna talk about Moto then, guys. Bromms brings me this lovely setup. I thought that meant, like, oh, I'm gonna talk about
I was setting you up for the dunk, man. That's all.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. So, like Bromms said, he's the inventor of the Super Adventure Box, which, outside of that, I don't think we know too much about him, other than the fact that he created the best video game, and it's supposed to be a training exercise, I believe.
For the progeny, yeah.
And yeah, I'm trying to think. He doesn't really... I mean, we know that his name, Moto, is part of Miyamoto, because the princess is Princess Mia.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Moto, so it's obviously a play on words for Shigeru Miyamoto from, the president of Nintendo. But, you know, he did make what a lot of people consider to be one of the best temporary content that we've ever seen in Guild Wars, because you could get things by grinding, or you could buy things. And there was no random, there was like a little bit of RNG, but it was manageable.
Yeah, it was very casual friendly, which I think some of the things haven't been so much. But yeah, it was accessible for everyone. There was even an infantile mode so that people that weren't very good at platformy type games could still experience all of it and go through it. It was great. I mean, and it's supposed to be coming back, which is awesome. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, you know, there was, I think, what does he say? My Super Adventure Box empowers students to reach their potential while building character through interactive play experience. And, you know, you need the continue coins to go in. And it was just basically a cool way for ArenaNet to pay homage to classic video games, kind of what got most of us started, like Zelda and Mario and all those classic Nintendo games that they were, you know, kind of difficult as well. When that's kind of Super Adventure Box was also could be kind of difficult.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All
Like
down on hard mode.
yeah, that was supposed to be implemented. We never got that either. Grumpy mode, I think they were gonna call it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think we have much more on Moto.
Yeah, we don't know much about him, but
Just kind of randomly showed up one day.
yep.
He's still there.
Yeah, I don't think he just has dialogue about how the Super Adventure Box is offline for upgrading.
Yeah.
My guess is probably that'll be our recurring April Fool's content. Hopefully sooner, but if not,
Yeah,
at
it
least.
sounds like they're supposed to bring it back by the end of the year.
Did they say that?
Well, they haven't specifically said that, but they've shown some things about it in some of the recent patch talk.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like they're gonna bring it back sooner than April, but I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently, the Super Adventure Box was he was using it as a fundraising type event as well,
I wonder what he was raising funds for.
I don't know, but
to
he's gotta be
support
rich.
his revolutionary educational venture.
Mm.
That's awesome.
He's the best.
Yeah.
And I also wonder too if part of the reason why it was so dumbed down like that was because he allowed non-Asura progeny to go in it, because they think that, you know, all the other races are stupid and slow,
Right.
so that it needs to be like dumbed down and simplistic for the rest of us non-Asura to be able to run through and, you know, not get frustrated and quit. So yeah, I don't know if there's many other Asura, like significant Asura characters other than the guy whose name escapes me who helped Canuck, Subdirector Knoll from
Right.
the Bromms, how about you? You want to talk about Subdirector Knoll? Did you drop Moto on me?
Yeah, give me just a minute to access my memory banks,
Click, 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 click.
aka Google. Oh yeah, I remember him now. The member of the consortium that worked with in South Sun. Yeah, with Canuck. I think that's all I remember about him though.
Nice. Alright.
So that was awesome. Good.
Well, alright then. Good. This is a good episode, guys. I love it.
Yeah, very well informed.
Alright, so let's move on to speculation. What do you guys, you have any, or have you seen any interesting Asura-based speculation?
I barely see anybody talk about the Asura.
Yeah, they've kind of had the short end of the stick as far as...
Oh, is that a short joke?
It was. As far as their exposition, I guess, because like there was no Asura candidate, there's no Asura leader for any of the like the Vigil or the Priory or anything like that. Yeah, they just kind of. I mean, I guess that's how they wanted to just do their own thing, but there hasn't been too much with them in that regard.
Was the Priory not headed by an Asura?
Yeah, it is.
Maybe it was.
No, it is. Bromms is silly.
Alright, well, I'm just gonna be silly then and forget that.
Yes, the head of the Derman Priory is an Asura. And for somebody who expresses how much he loves the Derman Priory due to Siren, you think he would remember.
I just love Siren, that's all.
Oh, okay.
Once she disappears, the rest doesn't matter.
I
You
suppose.
made me sad.
Yeah, way to bring down the whole podcast.
His name was Stuart Gix.
Yes, Gix. You actually have pretty heavy interaction with him. I think more so than the other. I mean, you do interact with the other heads of the other orders, but I feel like you go to him for information a lot more. And the whole, if you have the one storyline that leads with the Amulet of Balthazar, that mission in the Derman Priory, like that's all closely. You're working with him directly, and I kind of like that.
He gets angry at you if you don't report back.
Yeah. And well, he sends you on that awesome mission for the Sanguinade Blade or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then Traherne makes it non-necessary. Just Khalid Bog.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought of a really important Asura we didn't talk about.
Oh yeah?
Toymaker Tix.
Oh yeah.
The entire Winter's Day patch.
Oh yeah.
How about that guy?
I remember that.
Yeah.
Stupid dolls.
Yeah, he, again, there's not a ton we know about Tix, really. But, Bromms, what do you got about Toymaker Tix?
He lives in a floating balloon.
That's true, he does.
Yep. And he likes to spread holiday cheer.
That
He
is
was
another.
the guest this year, so I wonder if that means that there will be a different one next year if he'll be coming back.
I hope so, because I saved all those stupid globs of stuffing and mystic cogs.
He's apparently part of the Funworks crew.
I don't know.
The Funworks crew. Yes.
Who else?
Wasn't this thing like the Infinarium or something like that?
Yeah,
Yes.
Infinararium or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then he had
It's basically just a well, I guess yeah, toy maker, obviously.
he's just a toy maker? Yes, he's Tyrian Santa this year, apparently. Even though we had old nickels and stuff like we used to have in Guild Wars 1, this is the... Yeah, I do wonder if he'll make a comeback.
I am almost if not, then somebody from the Funworks crew probably will, but he probably will make a comeback.
I would like to see something different. I think it would be cool if they rotated... I don't know if I'd particularly enjoy the Char Winter's Day. You know, but I mean, this is an Asura who just loves spreading holiday cheer and giving out toys and visits all of the main cities, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Where he settles in Lion's Arch.
In his awesome golem-shaped airship.
Gave everybody 2 15-slot bags if you were there the whole time.
Yeah.
And some of the cutest mini pets in the game.
Yes.
That Griffin, I'm telling you what.
And also the most difficult enemy in the game through those princess dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little ridiculous. But, alright, so that's Toymaker Tix. Yeah. Sorry about this, guys. We're still getting the hang of this, because we keep switching things up every week, so... Alright, so I guess last bit for speculation, we don't really have a whole lot, because Asura, there's not much expected, other than, you know, we'll have to see what comes out of the Thaumanova reactor fractal, but the Inquest experimenting with dragons is about all we have, and we don't know much else other than that.
Well, it turned the world inside out. It will never be the same.
There is one thing as far as speculation, and it's in the Brisbane Wildlands.
Okay.
There's like a little mini Inquest base, and spread around it you can see Inquest members talking with Nightmare Court and with the bandits. So it seems like they're trying to gather allies from the other evil factions, which I mean, who knows what that could lead to, but I have a feeling that the inquests are going to be really huge down the road. It's almost guaranteed.
It'll lead to what they want and then killing off all the other factions.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, they might end up playing them against each other so that we join up with them.
Yeah.
Alright, so unless you guys have anything else you want to mention about the Asura, I guess we can kind of wrap this up.
Nope.
I do have one thing.
Sure.
What I'm really impressed about the Asura is that they came above ground in Guild Wars 1.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, Radisum wasn't theirs originally, but they kind of built up from that. And what we don't know is if the floating objects in Radisum in Guild Wars 1 were theirs, or if they were what was there before. And their architecture has kind of taken, like, the shape of what was around them.
Yeah, that's true, because I never really think too much about Radisum from Guild Wars 1, but you're right, and it's clearly prevalent on in Guild Wars 2 that they have that same kind of floaty architecture.
Yeah, because if you look at their underground places, it was just caves.
Yeah, like the Central Transfer Chamber and that other place that they had that the destroyers destroyed. aptly named ArenaNet.
So I'm really impressed that they came up so far for just being relatively new to the surface.
Yeah, and they seem to have thrived and made a pretty big name for themselves. They created the waypoint system, which stupid. Now we have Keel.
It's now cheaper.
For 4 weeks and then never again.
I'm gonna waypoint all around just to spite you.
That's fine. I'm gonna buy my Black Lion keys anyway.
Go ahead.
Just to spite Ellen Keel. How about that?
I'm going to waypoint around an average amount and not buy any Black Lion keys because I never do.
Well, then I'm just gonna sit on my claim tickets and hopefully I'll get something worth buying.
There you go.
But, and I'm hoping that we get unique skins going down the road and they don't bring back the Halloween skins.
Yeah.
Like how they brought back the Lost Shores skins, but we'll see. Alright, so this podcast got all over the place, but that's okay. That's how we like it here at Chronicles of Tyria.
It's because we're not Asura, so you can't expect much of us to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, alright, I guess we'll wrap this up then. So for the 6th episode, a little all over the place, Asura Lorecast, I'm Lagwyn.
I'm Bromms.
Alu.
I knew it was gonna happen. I was waiting for it all episode.
I knew it would happen too.
Alright, so I'm Lagwyn. Silence.
You go first.
I'm Alu.
I'm Bromms.
And we'll see you next time.